All right, here we are, lesson 13. This is day 3 and the last day that we're going to devote time in class to finish up this project. So, first thing I want you to do is get your white activity guide worksheet, just so I can kind of talk you through what it should look like when you're done and you hand it in. Okay? So, first things first here. So, back when you first got it, I said start brainstorming what you think you want. And we had kind of scribbled off to the side here the general criteria of what you needed to include. So I'm not going to be picky about full sentences or anything. Just what do you think you were going to put on your scene? For me, I was going to go with a Minnesota theme. I'm going to include a lot of the sports logos, maybe something with Lake Superior, and kind of go from there, okay, and see what I can find. All right, so that's kind of what I'm going to do. All right, now on the prepare part, here's the grid, and it's asking you, all right, what is it going to look like when it starts? So mine, I'm going to have my state of Minnesota. Don't laugh at my lack of artistic talent here. Ooh, there's the bump over there by Brownsville, I think. And then it comes up, there's Lake of the Woods. Okay, you get it, right? I'll probably have the words Minnesota across the middle, and then I'm going to have different logos and things come flying in. I'll probably have the lake kind of come swimming on by or something like that, okay? Again, your initial plan might change as you start researching and looking for some of your artwork. So it's okay if it doesn't match exactly. All right, flip your paper over. On this part, it says list the sprites that you are going to use. So on mine, and then it says where were they located. So I have a state of Minnesota. They didn't have that in code.org. I had to go look for that in Google. Same thing with all of these logos that I got for the Wild, for the Minnesota Lynx, the Timberwolves. All of these, I ended up having to Google them because code.org didn't have things. If you use something from code.org, then definitely say you found it there. Now, this is the part where you're going to tell me, all right, how did you end up making things animate on your screen? So I'll just give you one example, then show you what I had. So my Timberwolves logo, I used the .y property. Remember, y is vertical. So that one, I used a random number because then it appears like it's bouncing, like a basketball, okay? But I also, for the Timberwolves, I also used an X property, which is horizontal, because I made it move to the right across the screen. And I did that using addition. The counter pattern, that just means math. So like plus or minus. So I used addition to make things visually look like it's moving across the screen. And then put whatever else you need there. Okay, let's go take a peek at mine so you can see what I mean here. All right. So I've got my state of Minnesota and the words, and then I've got all these different things flying in and moving all over the screen. Notice the two basketball logos for the Timberwolves and the Lynx. They're both moving horizontally, but at the same time, they're also bouncing. So I'm utilizing random numbers as well as regular addition or subtraction to make things appear like they are bouncing. Okay? Now, at the bottom of your activity guide, there are 2 questions to reflect upon. These are probably the most important. After you get done with the big project, you should always ask yourself, all right, what are you most proud of? And what was the most challenging? Okay, so before you turn this in, if you get it done today, which I'm kind of hoping you will, be sure you answer those 2 questions. Okay, cool. Next, look at the rubric, which should have been handed out to you now, and it's the yellow worksheet that looks like this. Okay, so don't worry about these big words like modularity and algorithms and all of that stuff. That's the standards that we have for computer science and my words. You start focusing on these columns, okay? First thing is sprites. Do you have 3 or more? If you do, then kind of use this rubric as your self-check. You don't have to hand it back into me this time, but just go through and say, oh, do I have everything to get full points? Do I have 3 or more properties for my sprites? Like, look at mine. All right. Now I have a ton of movement here with dot Y's, dot X's. There's a rotation up here somewhere with the soccer one. But also, even before your draw loop, notice I had to use scale a lot. No problem in utilizing enough properties there. Okay, cool. The next part of your rubric, text. Do you have one chunk of text there somewhere? Cool. Did you use a couple properties like size and color, or font, I guess, to add to your text so that it's readable on your screen? These last 3 are a little more complicated, so make sure you have a pencil and let's look at them. The draw loop, this I want to make sure that you've separated the code that should be inside the draw loop there and things that don't belong in the draw loop outside. Here's what I mean. I had a whole bunch of sprites, and when you first create your sprite, you always go into this part of the toolbox and use these first 2 pieces of code. All right. All of that should be at the beginning. No draw loop yet. Okay. This is just one and done, kind of name it and pick your animation. Okay. I do have some scale properties because I had to originally size these before I made a move. Then inside your draw loop, okay, here comes the green. There's the draw loop, function draw. Then things like background, all of your movement, the draw sprite command, and your text. That should be what's inside. So I'll be looking at that. The next one, I haven't talked a lot about this, about moving differently. Okay. If we go back and think about the fish, so lesson 12, where you had to make all of the fish move on the screen, okay, they all were using the X property. They all were moving the same way, different speeds, but the same way. This one is saying that at least you've got at least things that are moving in different ways, okay? Meaning don't have everything utilizing the X property. Maybe you have a bounce vertically and a horizontal move, all right? That's what I mean. Or do you have something spinning? Do you have something growing with scale? Have different kinds of property movement there. And then the last one, you need something that's a smooth movement, meaning you're using the counter pattern, which means math, add or subtract, and then something that uses random number. Cool. Okay? That's what you need. Now, when I was looking at lesson 13, back here at the very first stage where it says, hey, here's an example for you. And when I ran it, I was like, wait a minute here. I'm just letting it reload. When I run this, look at this. Not only are these 2 aliens moving, but the words are too. And I was like, hey, we never learned how to make text move. So I want you to do it with me right now, and I'll show you how. You don't have to utilize this in your project, but you certainly can if you want. And it's only 2 lines of code, so it's pretty straightforward. All right. Grab your Chromebook, open up to code.org, but this time I want you to go back to lesson 12, level 5. This was the one that we had with the mouse before. We were using it last Friday. So pause the video if you need to, so everyone can get at this particular spot. Okay, so we are going to make text move on the screen. So the first thing we need to do is get some text on the screen. So find under the ellipse in the drawing part of the toolbox, grab text string and drag this over and put it under the draw sprites, but inside the draw loop. Okay, and if you need to pause so people can catch up and look at this, do so. Decide what you want to say on the screen. I'm just going to say yikes because usually if you see a mouse in the house, you would scream. So it's really tiny and it's positioned at 015, which is way up here in the corner. That's okay. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I have words on the screen. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make these words float or fall down the screen, okay? Normally, when I ask you to make something move, we go into the sprites part of the toolbox. But this is text and it's not a sprite. So we have to handle this in a little different way. Instead of using any of the sprite commands, we're going to go to this part, the purple part of the toolbox called variables. Do you remember back in lesson 5, there was the checkpoint was the smiley face, and the one eyeball was really big, and the other eye was really small, and the thing, poor smiley face, looked like it had a concussion. Okay, and we used variables to make those sizes match. We're going to kind of use variables in a similar way. Okay, there are 2 blocks here. We're going to use each one. Grab this first one that says declare a variable. Boom, here we go. Drag it over and put it inside, or I should say above the draw loop. So put it right about line 4, okay? Name it words or something easy to type, something short. Don't call it text. Text will give a flag for an error because text is also a command in JavaScript, so don't use text. Use words or something, okay? Then we have to assign it a value. What do we want to assign it? Let's see. Because I'm going to make it come down the screen, it is starting at a position of 15 for the Y position. So I'm going to say, let's just pick 15, okay? Words are starting up here, then I'm going to make them fall. In order to do that now, I'm going to work inside the draw loop. So let's grab this other block that just says x equals and drag this inside the draw loop between the draw sprites and your text. Name it to match whatever you named your variable. I said words. Now, instead of just putting a number, we're going to use math because we want this number to increase every time the draw loop runs so that it goes down, 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 down the screen. Grab addition and put that right there. Okay, so here I'm just going to retype what I called it, words, and then put something like a number 1. You can change it later if you want, that's fine. Okay, so you should have 2 lines of code. One up here where we established the variable and gave it a value. And then inside the draw loop, we're going to take this variable and add 1 each time. So it gets bigger, bigger, bigger. That's going to move it down the screen. Now, if you tried right now, it doesn't work yet. It's just sitting there. Hang on, because now we're going to go into this line where you have your text and change that 15. Instead of being a flat number, change it to be the name of your variable. Run your program. There it is. See it? It's falling down the screen. Sweet. Okay. In fact, if you wanted to get really fancy, change the x value of 0 to be your variable as well. And now your words follow right along. What? That's so cool. Okay. Neat. Now, you could also, do you remember here on this one, see how this text is just shaking back and forth? You know, you could just use a random number for, say, the x value. And whoopsies, get this in the right spot. And if I just use that instead of the variable, then it would shake as it fell down. See how it's shaking? That's the x part, and then the y part's going down. So lots of cool things you can try. All right. You don't have to make your text move. I just wanted to show it to you. Okay. So here's your job today. Finish this activity guide as you're programming, okay? If you get this totally done, turn it in the back tray, okay? And then go ahead and keep programming. As you are working in code.org, get all the way through to this last level, level 7. And when you get there, the last button you should see is going to say submit. That way I'll know you're done, okay? Good luck, happy coding, and I'm excited to see what you come up with.